Hello, Planeswalkers! Welcome to the Lotus Archives, the heart of arcane knowledge and the realm of Magic the Gathering. Guided by the sages at KLVD Studios, embark on a journey through ancient scrolls and powerful spells. From deck-building enchantments to legendary battlefield stories, we bring you the wisdom and wonder of Commander. Whether you're a master mage or just tapping into your powers, the mysteries of the multiverse are yours to discover. Let the magic begin.
Hello, Planeswalkers! Welcome back to our next episode of the Lotus Archives. This week we have something special here. We're going to re-dive into a segment that we started a few weeks ago here when we started talking about different mechanics in Magic's history. And we briefly touched on some of the best mechanics in Commander format, but we're going to be diving deeper into more of the history of them in these coming episodes here. And we are starting with the infamous Infect.
My favorite. I love this one.
Jack, why don't you go ahead and start with, when did Infect officially come out?
All right, so the fun bit about Infect, right, as we know it now, is it wasn't always called Infect, right? Hell, it didn't even really have a name when it first came out, right? So we initially have, right, so like Infect, as we all know, inflicts poison counters onto your opponent when they deal damage. And when you reach 10 poison, you're done. That's it. You lost the game, right? So, but we used to not always have Infect. In the way before times, back in Legends, we had two cards that came out that introduced poison counters in the form of Pit Scorpion and Serpent Generator, where Pit Scorpion simply reads as a 2 and a black, 1/1. If it damages an opponent, the opponent gets a poison counter. And if they have 10 or more, then they lose the game. That was simply it. And the Serpent Generator was just a 6-mana artifact. Pay some mana, tap it, make a poison snake. It has the same thing. If it hits a player, they get a poison counter. And then it also has this text of, if they have 10 or more, they lose. So that was the first ever iteration of introducing poison to the game, which is wild to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long frickin' time ago.
Right? And we wouldn't really see anything else to do with poison counters until Future Sight, where we had two more cards that came out with it in a different form, in Virulent Sliver and Snake Cult Initiation. So these two cards have a new text, a new keyword of Poisonous 1, and the Snake Cult Initiation gives them Poisonous 3. Which essentially is, if this creature damages an opponent, they get a poison counter, or for the Snake Cult Initiation, if they damage them, they get 3 poison counters. So this is basically what, for all of us who played Phyrexia All of V1, they got that new toxic mechanic. Well, Poisonous was basically toxic before we got toxic.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, when they reintroduced toxic, is basically, they would just retrained Poisonous. And we wouldn't actually even see Infect, the actual mechanic that we all know and love, until Scars of Mirrodin block. With a great old card like Skithiryx, right? The Blight Dragon, we all love Skittles. Being the cool, fun, hasty dragon it can be.
So
that simply has, deal damage equal to its power. They get that many poison counters.
So, since we're talking history and all that here, why did we start seeing Infect in that Mirrodin block?
Well, that's when we had New Phyrexia, right? So the set New Phyrexia was introduced there, and we had the Phyrexians pulling their nonsense, and one of their big things was they wanted to introduce this poison mechanic as a part of their infectious, oily nature, as a way of, infecting the world around them to become themselves, right? And we even saw in in Phyrexia All Be One, the cards started getting the Phyrexian creature type.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We didn't get Phyrexian. Phyrexian wasn't a creature type for all these other cards with Infect. But now pretty much every card that has Infect was basically almost essentially reprinted to have that. Like Skithiryx now has Phyrexian Dragon thing on it, whereas before it didn't.
Oh, it does?
So, yep. So new, like if you go back to Scars of Mirrodin, the Skithiryx that I sent you, it doesn't have Phyrexian, but if you look at newer copies of it, it has Phyrexian in its card type, in its creature type.
I was going to say, the copy that I have doesn't have Phyrexian on it.
Right. The one I got for my Phyrexian deck does.
That's...
Which I think is fantastic. I love Phyrexia. I love all things Phyrexia. I think they're the coolest villains we've ever had in Magic's history.
Yeah, I was going to say, because the Skithiryx that I have just says Dragon Skeleton.
Right.
And I'm looking at the new one from March the Machine, and it says Phyrexian Dragon Skeleton.
Indeed.
Which is pretty cool that they changed that.
Yep, so Blight Mamba, right? We all know Blight Mamba, simple 2-drop green creature, has Infect. It is now a Phyrexian snake as well. So essentially, when we got All Will Be One, they retrained all these old, Infect creatures to have the Phyrexian moniker on them as well. But now there is, and then we got Toxic, of course, which, operates a little bit differently. So, right, so that's a little bit of a fun history on Infect and its nature, right? Infect was the keyword that came out with Scars of Mirrodin. Poison was introduced way before that, in its sense. And they really took a different turn when it came to Infect in itself. As a creature with Infect doesn't deal damage like other creatures do. Right? They have that thing on them that says if they do damage, they do it in the form of poison counters and -1 counters.
Yes.
Which differs from Toxic, where, if they deal damage to you, you still get dealt regular combat damage equal to their power, but then you also get X amount of poison counters, where X is the Toxic number. So that's the biggest key difference between what Poisonous was and what Toxic is now compared to, creatures like Skithiryx and Blight Mamba in their Infect form. And that's what makes it so dangerous compared to the others.
So, obviously we got Infect, we got Poisonous, we got Toxic now. There's one other that's very similar, and I've often heard it called the Gentleman's Infect. And we got Wither, too. Now...
Yeah, Wither is different, yeah.
I don't want to dive too much into Wither here, because I feel like it's really not even close to Infect in terms of its styling. You're really just giving creatures -1/-1 counters.
Right, so Wither is a mechanic that they also had to kind of play on giving -1/-1 counters to creatures... but not doing the poison effect that we all know and love, which is cool. It's a cool kind of mechanic. Like, you got the Scorpion God from Amonkhet.
Yep.
That really focuses on the -1/-1 counters. And honestly, he's one of my, he's a cool card that I've been wanting to build for a while now, to be honest. I thought about putting him together because he's just one of the cooler designs of that set.
So, we did a brief history of it. What does Infect look like today in Magic, specifically in the Commander format?
Infect is potent.
Do you believe as a player, Infect, it's actually viable?
Oh, 100%. Infect is a very viable mechanic to renew the game. It's very... more so now than ever, thanks to the Phyrexian All Will Be One set, giving us... they even gave us a Phyrexian, Toxic Precon to mess around with. So it has a innumerable number of, proliferate effects and just ways to give poison counters to players now. that was introduced in it.
I mean,
So all you gotta do is look at that deck list, and you can see that it's stronger than ever.
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at. I just pulled up real quick the top
Mm.
6 Infect commanders, and
Yep.
number 1, you obviously have Atraxa,
Oh
which
yeah,
is a
Drax is the number
no-brainer.
one.
With
Yep.
the proliferate, it's a no-brainer that she's on there as number 1. But then, surprisingly, the next 2 are both
Hmm.
from the latest block in Ixchel, Scion of Atraxa.
That's the one that I run.
Yep. And then from the same deck, you
Yep.
have Vishgras, the Doomhive.
Yep. He's in the 99. He's
And
very good.
then you got Finn, the Fangbearer, as number 4.
Yep.
Even though Finn is so freaking fast, he has less decks built that are strictly Infect decks
Right.
as opposed to some of these other ones. Granted, Finn, I think that's a little bit biased because you're not really building Finn as an Infect deck. You're building him as a Death
Right.
Touch deck.
Right. He's got the poison abilities to do things, but it's not particularly infect based.
Yes. Like, I
Right,
know
like
my
it's not.
Finn deck, I have maybe 1 or 2 creatures that actually have Infect as their
Right.
ability. 99% of them have Death Touch, which is what I
Exactly. So,
want.
right. So still trying to win through poison counters, but not so much in the infect sense, which is the cool, idea of these decks is you don't have to play infect precisely to inflict poison and to win through poison.
Exactly.
So it's kind of cool. Like my sliver deck, I run the virulent sliver, so theoretically my sliver deck can win through inflicting enough poison counters. If I swing at you with 10 slivers that can't be blocked, and they've all got poisonous one, well, guess what? Each one's going to inflict a single poison counter on you.
Exactly.
So there you go. Sliver is just one with infect. Well, infect.
I mean,
So it's a very cool mechanic.
yeah. I mean, the top 5 Infect commanders, only 2 of them aren't from the latest Direxia block, and that's Atraxa and Finn.
Yep.
The number 5 is Brimaz, Blight of Oreskos.
Yep, he's a very good one. He's in my Ixiel deck as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure he's in the Ixchel precon.
No, he's not.
Oh, he wasn't?
No, he was an upgrade I had to buy.
Okay.
But he's very potent in that deck.
But
So Toxic made it. I don't want to say made it easier to inflict poison stuff onto things because it took away the nature of infect dealing damage equal to the creature's power. I used to play a legacy deck that was just straight mono green infect, and I would play things like Blight Mamba and Glistener Elf, and then you would just pump them up with cards similar to Giant Growth and Berserk. Pump them up on turn 2, like you play them turn 1, pump them up turn 2, swing for the win. So you can't really do that with Toxic, as pumping the creature's power no longer inflicts more poison. You can only do it based on Toxic number itself.
yeah.
So personally, I always prefer the infect mechanic as a means of inflicting that.
Yeah, because the Infect, it's nice because you could pump up a 1/1, pump him up to a 10/10, swing,
And then
and you automatically win.
Yeah.
No different than Blightsteel Colossus.
Exactly.
Whereas, like
But
we were,
then there comes the controversy of it you know, it can make people a little upset, and there are times where in games, if you see an infect player, you're going to be the target. So if you want to play infect, you got to know there's going to be, pun intended, some toxicity following you through that gameplay.
yeah,
It's tough to get into a game and how quickly infect can sometimes win. Like it can take a player out in just 10 counters.
yeah.
So at times it can be tough to be that first guy that gets targeted by the infect player. It can be a feel bad sometimes.
I mean, I know we were talking before we got started here, and I was talking about how with my Finn deck, I mostly play it in 1v1 formats now. I try not to play that in a pod because I know by the time I get 1, maybe 2 people killed,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have enough juice to finish it off in the same turn. So
Yeah,
generally
that
when I
becomes the issue.
yeah, generally when I play Finn in a pod, I usually play second. Because usually someone's able to board wipe me and then kill me.
Yeah, so that there is the the con or like the double-sided sword aspect of Infect is people like to say, oh, it's such an easy thing, you just need 10 to win, blah blah blah. Okay, well, not in a 1v1, yes. In a 1v1 setting, you get 10 onto your opponent, you win. Okay, cool, easy peasy. In a pod, though, I feel like it's sometimes overlooked where you don't need 10, you need 30.
Yeah.
And while yes, we do have proliferate effects like with Atraxa and in the Ixial decks and stuff, they have all the proliferate mechanics in green and black and all that stuff, which is great. If you end up in a game where you're lacking those things, getting 30 poison counters onto your opponent can be a huge challenge.
Yeah.
And also doing that while keeping them off your back and while trying to stay alive and keep your board state, it can be kind of tricky. It can be kind of tough to not appear as the threat when everybody knows you're playing Infect, you're the threat, right? So
Exactly.
it can be tough, and I feel like that's kind of overlooked a few times where it's like, oh, let's oh, it's such a low number to win, we should bump it up to like 20 or something. It's like, no, it's difficult enough as it is, right? Don't make me go from having to get 30 to now 60
Yeah.
poison counters on my opponents. That's just no, that's gonna break its viability. It's gonna ruin the mechanic. It's just gonna make it dead in the water. Nobody's gonna play it.
So with a segue with that, we had a conversation in one of your playgroups Discord channels here, and about the potential of moving poison damage up or keeping it the same.
A lot of people have. That's been kind of one of the big discussions in the community I've seen, is increasing Infect from 10 to either 15 or 20. Which I don't know. What are your initial thoughts on that?
My initial thoughts, just leave it. Because realistically, if 10 wasn't if 10 wasn't high enough, realistically, the meta would have changed by now.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with all these cards from Direxia that just came out last year or 2 years ago. We would be seeing almost every single CEDH level deck winning by Infect.
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, most
There's
of the
just more
top
viable options.
yeah, most of the top CEDH decks don't even run Infect. And
no, they're doing They're doing like combat tricks or infinite combos on turn 2, turn 3, infinite combos. Because there's faster, easier ways to win than trying to inflict 30 poison counters to your board.
Exactly, because it's not like in Standard or Legacy Modern, the 1v1 60 card formats.
Right.
It's not like those where you're just facing one person. Mm-hmm. And not only are you only facing one person there, you can have up to 4 copies of the best Infect cards.
Yep. Which is very cheap. That deck was very cheap to build. A mono green Infect deck back then was like maybe $60-$70.
Yeah. I mean,
dirt cheap.
Now in Commander, obviously being a singleton format, you can only have one of each. So up until the latest Direxia set, we were really scraping the bottom of the barrel to get these Infect cards. And
it was Atraxa or bust.
Yeah.
Like before Finn or before the new Phyrexian set with Alduin, it was like you couldn't really play Infect unless you played Atraxa.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, it's like, okay, you play Atraxa, guess what? Here's the biggest target on your back. You're done. Like, that's it. You're good luck getting anything out. You're gonna be, public enemy number 1, and you just have to kind of live with that.
And unfortunately, I think with Atraxa, because of how powerful she is, it doesn't matter if you're playing Infect or Super Friends. You're going to be public enemy number 1.
Yeah.
Which...
that's just one of those commanders that's it's just going to be up there.
Like, Atraxa, ever since she came out in the precons, it's been one of those decks where I own the precon. I don't play it.
I built a dumb as fuck Super Friends deck out of her. It lasted maybe 4 to 5 months, and I disassembled it because it did the same thing over and over. It was, okay, Deep Glow Skate this Planeswalker, doubling season this thing, ultimate this guy, and it was too samey. It was too similar. It did the same jank planeswalker stuff over and over. It was a lot of fun to have all these planeswalkers working together, but like at the end of the day, it just wasn't. I don't know, wasn't for me. But
It's a very
it's
one
very
track win.
yeah, and that's the same with Infect. Infect can be a very tunnel vision, one track mind, you know. But you got to be cautious with it because you have to. It's almost like Voltron style
Yep.
in a sense, where if you don't have enough ways to spread the poison around, then you need to like pick your target, right? You
Hmm.
gotta laser focus on somebody and hope you picked right because if you pick somebody who may not be the biggest threat, but you've already committed to taking them out, the rest of the board's gonna knock you out before
Oh,
you can say, "Oops."
exactly. And like for instance, with my Fin deck,
Yeah.
I love my Fin deck. It is one of my favorite decks to play, but I hardly ever play it.
Yeah.
And yes, my Fin deck is fast. Yes, it's a lot
It
of
can be.
low
Yeah.
CMC cost creatures with Death Touch, which I need. But if I don't draw the right creatures,
Hmm.
I'm fucked.
Yeah. That's
Because
just it. And if Finn isn't on the board for you, you're basically toast.
yeah, like
Without Finn, all your stuff is just Death Touch, which is like, all right, that's cool. Death Touch blockers are nice, but without your commander on board, what are you gonna do?
I mean, at the end of the day, with my Fin, if I'm not killing somebody by turn
Mm.
3, it's not performing well.
Right.
And with all the fast mana and mana rocks I have in that deck, my goal is to kill at least one person by turn 3 if
Absolutely.
I'm in a pod. But it's not that easy when you're playing in a pod.
No, it's not. That's the biggest challenge. Is at that point, as we've stated, you need 30 poison essentially in a group of four. But if we bump it up, you might as well just use commander damage,
Exactly.
which was the biggest point that my play group was making here, which was basically if you need 20 poison to win, that's one shy of commander damage. You might as well just be bashing in with your commander at that point
Hmm.
and not even bother. So it makes it not as viable. Whereas if we leave it at 10, yeah, it can knock somebody out early ish sometimes, depending on God hands and all that stuff. But then it's like, okay, I dealt with one person. Now there's two more that I got to try to contend with, which makes it a challenge.
Exactly. And like the thing that I've experienced playing my Fin deck, and I'm sure you've done the same playing your Ixal deck, is I may have the right hand, the right mana to be able to get my stuff out onto the field quickly. But with 3 other people knowing
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do,
Yep.
chances are that stuff's not going to last on the board until the next time I'm out or next time my turn is. Like the
Yeah, no, with the board that's paying attention, with players that know what they're doing and have seen that stuff before, they'll know to target your permanents. They'll know to be aware of your proliferate effects and, any effect you have. But I feel like the way to make a poison deck really shine and work in multiplayer like that is you need ways to spread the things around, which is why I've actually really loved Ixil,
yep,
as she has the corrupted mechanic,
that mechanic is so freaking cool.
which corrupted is fantastic. So that is one where the more players that have at least three or more poison counters on them, you get the benefits, right? I think for Ixiel, it's each one they exile top card of their library, and you can play it. So it's like a little bit
Yep.
of a sub theft theme, which is cool. I'm not a big theft guy. I don't really care for the theft stuff. She's really just the commander there because it's like she cares about having more people poisoned, and I get a little bit of a benefit,
Yep.
but that's really it. So having decks like that, which like is the same with like Atraxa, where you can have those 4 and 3 colors to get the proliferate effects, get the abilities to spread the poison around, and that can make it easier somewhat to do that. But that then also makes you a threat, right? So it,
Yes.
it bumps your threat level up a little bit more. as they know, okay, you can inflict more poison to everybody. We've seen you do it. We know it's possible. We gotta take you out ASAP. So
Yeah, and that's the
we're gonna play
biggest.
Infect, aware of that.
Yeah, and that's the biggest downside with a deck like my Finn deck
Yeah,
is almost everybody knows what I'm trying to do.
yeah,
There's
that's pretty. You
one
know,
way to play it, and most Finn decks that I've seen are almost all identical, with the exception of
yeah,
like the mana
this is
base.
the same. Yeah,
And when I first built him, I was trying to shy away from building him because
yeah,
he's so similar to everything else. But
yeah. That can be a challenge with certain decks like that, like meta decks.
yeah,
Essentially, it's like there's only really one way to play it, and you're gonna do the one way to play it.
but I ended up building him because when I was doing the whole thing where I wanted to build monocolor, 5 monocolor decks of as
Hmm.
strong as I could, Finn was my first choice because I like the
Absolutely.
infect mechanic and the death touch, and I saw how quick that deck could be. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go with that route to change it up. And realistically, mono green with decks that's for speed
Hmm.
and decks that you want to be tier 4 level, you only really have 3 options.
Yeah.
You got Finn, Omnath Locus of Mana, and Marwyn the Nurturer. Unless you go the other elf boy there, Azuri.
Missouri.
Those are
Yep,
really
you
the
can play Missouri deck.
only options that I would even consider be like, okay, that could be a solid tier 4 that can compete with CEDH level decks. For mono green,
Yeah.
that is. But at the end of the day, Finn, he's infect, but he's not. He's giving poison counters, which we were
Right.
describing earlier. But I mean, even if we bump up poison to 15, would I be
I still
would I be upset
that,
about it? Yeah,
that's 45 poison to win. That's
exactly.
still
It's still a
I
lot.
don't no, I don't think we need to do that. I think it needs to stay the same and if I don't want to do this big like shout out to people that get butthurt about it or anything, but like if you are somebody that does get salty over infect, which is rightfully so, right? Like rightfully so being upset or kind of annoyed at how quick infect can go off because it does make sense, right? Getting killed by only 10 things, you get bashed in by a sneak attacked, you know, um, crap. I just had a huge brain fart. I'm sorry. Um, wow, my brain just completely crapped the bed there. The 11 Titan
Oh,
that
Blightsteel Colossus.
Lightstone Colossus. There we go. Holy crap! I'm thinking like Blight Mamba and other stuff like that. Sorry, folks. That's huge brain fart on my end. I need more coffee. Yeah. So having a sneak attack in Blightsteel Colossus on turn 2 can be a big feel bad, right? Like that can suck.
Oh
Or
my
even on
god.
turn 4 or something. Like you're playing a cool game, and out of nowhere, your Bosch opponent is like, yeah, it's Bosch. It's just fun artifacts.
Yeah, sure.
And then they play sneak attack, and then the next turn they're like, okay, Blightsteel Colossus, you're dead.
Like
Like that can suck.
yeah, it's a feel
So
bad. I get it. Usually that first person that gets taken out by poison damage, they're sitting around waiting to play the next game now.
right,
So I get that. But looking
yeah.
at it as a pure mechanical standpoint and not oh man, this sucks, now I gotta wait till the next
Like a
game
dumb
starts.
gimmick, right? That's a dumb gimmick. Is if somebody sneak attacks in like a Blightsteel or like a big
Yeah.
dumb thing to kill you instantly. That's just a dumb gimmick that they put into their deck to be, ha ha, I got you.
Yeah.
And then they don't do anything else with it. It's like, okay, well, that's just dumb.
It's one of those things where, in my opinion, unless they start like crazy amount of printing like infect cards, I don't think it should even be a discussion. Like
Yeah, I
10
don't know
is
if we're gonna.
perfectly fine.
I don't think we're gonna see a lot more. I think Toxic was kind of the last bit we're gonna see for a mechanic that deals with poison counters.
Yeah.
Toxic was kind of like the end all be all for the moment. I don't think we'll see anything else really
No, I mean I
dealing.
think I think it'll be a while before we see even Phyrexians again.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna see them for a while. They kind of got the they kind of
Yeah,
got their shit kicked in with
yeah.
the last bit there.
I
So
mean, but the gap between the first time we saw Phyrexians and now was a long ass time too. What was it?
yeah,
Almost 20 years.
just about, yeah.
But
So
so I mean, I have a feeling everything comes in a circle, especially in
yeah,
Magic lore. So we'll probably see it again in the future, but I don't expect it for a long time. Unless they come out with a new creature type that deals with Infect. But who
I don't know if
knows?
we'll see Infect come back in the form that we know it
Yeah, it'll be
in
something
terms of
different.
right. Like I don't think they're gonna print Infect again on newer cards. I think we'll see something like Toxic again, or you know, a piece of some other kind of mechanic that might deal with poison. It'd be cool to see something new
Yeah,
that can inflict poison, and if they make a more streamlined way of inflicting poison, then I could see possibly in like if they make it easier to inflict poison than
yeah,
it already is, which in some cases built correctly, it can be not so challenging to spread the poison around, but it will take longer.
yes.
Which I kind of like how they did the precon
Well,
of like the XL deck. They made it so it doesn't just instantly kill the board. It's like, okay, you have to actually be strategic. You got to take your time. You got to get, okay, maybe a couple turns here. You get a poison, you get a poison, you get a poison. And it's like by turn 7 or 8, somebody might have 6 poison or they may have 5 poison. It's not an instant,
oh god, no.
you're dead at 10, you're dead at 10. It's not like that, which I really love about it. That's what I love about the Phyrexian style deck like that, where you're taking your time with it. You're letting the board play out. You're letting people do their thing, and you're having a more engaged game with it.
And that's why I think they went away from just using the keyword infect and went to toxic
Right. Because it
because
makes it
it's not as
harder.
big of a feel bad.
Right.
It's more of a sub theme. You can't just swing in with a 10-10 and win the game.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to have the higher toxic number or a way to just directly inflict poison counters,
'Cause, I mean,
and things like that.
like we were saying earlier, with a straight infect creature, you could pump that sucker up with equipment and have
And
that
then,
be a 10-10, even
yeah,
though it's a 1-1, and you can win the game. Like, I can see how that's a little bit of a feel bad.
it can be. Yeah.
Especially if you're able to do it quick and early. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, I don't think it needs to change right now.
No.
Um,
No, it doesn't. If they try to, I don't even really think it's a discussion that WotC is having, like the commander boards or whoever is heading that up. I don't think it's even on their radar. Like it might be on their radar. I'm thinking, okay, so it probably is something that they do consider every now and then. But in the grand scheme of things, when they're talking about like game changers and they're trying to figure out the bracket system and working all this stuff out, I don't think it's a huge topic that needs to be considered. It's just an alternate win con,
yeah,
which is like any other alternate win con. I mean, it might make you feel as bad as say somebody that wins with the Thassa's Oracle or a Laboratory Maniac. It's just an alternate way to pull off the win, and some people just don't like those,
and
which is valid. If you don't like
exactly.
the ultimate win, you know,
I mean,
what are you
unfortunately,
gonna do?
that's the or well, fortunately, that's the glory of Magic,
Yeah,
especially the Commander format. There's so many ways you can actually win the game. You don't just have to win by combat damage. I mean, that's why they came out with Commander damage for it. That's only 21 as opposed to the 40 life you have in Commander.
right. So like, oh, you just need half of the commander, which I like that because it's like, okay, well, it's your head guy. It's the dude you built the deck around. They're a powerful legendary creature. They should be able to inflict a bit more of a wound onto your opponent than your run of the mill Joe Schmo whatever creature.
I mean,
So I like that idea.
I'll be honest with you. I've won more games with alternate win cons than I have Commander damage.
Yeah.
But
I mean, unless I play like a Voltron style deck
yeah,
where the only idea is to soup up the commander, I typically never use commander damage
No,
to win,
because
unless
most of
it's
my
like a dragon deck or something, where if like the commander is a big beefy creature, like a dinosaur or like Tiamat or something, that's like yeah okay commander damage is on the board, but otherwise it's no.
I mean, Christ, even with my Miram deck,
Yeah,
90%
mirror.
of the time, I'm winning just by straight damage, not commander damage.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Like, the way I look at it is unless you are building a Voltron style deck, like you were saying,
Hmm.
if you are building your deck solely only able to win with your commander, you're not going to win a lot of games. Because if I realize your deck doesn't function without your commander, I'm going to make sure
That,
you don't get to
yeah,
play your commander.
yeah, that's definitely the key strat for that. Which thankfully a lot of these infect decks they typically don't need their commander in place. So that's a big boon for them as well. Like Atraxa, yeah, it's helpful. Ixil, yeah, she's helpful. Vishgraz is a big cool beater. But typically when it comes to these infect decks, you don't need the commander per se to make it pop off, except for Finn. You kind of need Finn to inflict the poison counters.
Yeah, Finn, you
But for the
definitely need
most
them.
part, with the other ones, yeah, for the other ones, you don't need it. I could go an entire game without playing Ixiel and still inflict enough poison to win. So it's kind of the cool, niche of that deck where it's like, I mean, yeah, for like a Traxxar, I was like, yeah, she proliferates. It's very useful to have. It's very powerful. But if somebody keeps killing it, well, that's kind of okay because you can do other stuff.
Yeah, you got other ways to get to your end goal.
Right.
Whereas, like with my Finn, if I don't have him
You
on
got
the field, I have
no
maybe
poison.
one or two other cards in my deck that'll give my creatures poison or infect. There's not many that I have in there. Like, I'm hoping that I'm able to A, get Finn on the battlefield quick, and B, protect him.
Right.
And by protecting him, I'm usually not attacking with him.
Right. Yeah.
Because all it takes is, oh, here's a blocker.
Yep.
And being as low power and toughness as he is, doesn't take much to kill him.
No.
Yeah, he's got Death Touch. Might kill your
Which is nice.
creature.
So like, he's gonna take whoever hits him. He's gonna take him with him, but that's
He's also going himself.
exactly. Which
But,
is cool. I like that they did. I like that they did that. I like the lore that they chose to go with that
oh,
because
for
he's supposed
Finn?
to be like the Fang Bearer of Coma.
Yes.
So it's a cool callback to the Norse legend of Thor fighting Jormungandr,
Yep.
where they kill each other at Ragnarok. Like Thor deals a finishing blow to Jormungandr, but then succumbs to the venom of the serpent. So it's a cool bit of like, okay, yeah, he's got the death touch, but he can inflict that poison. But then if you have a bigger thing, you're gonna die to it. So it's a cool little lore callback.
Yeah, no.
But I love the lore of the Phyrexians and these cool poison stuff. It's cool how you can see it progress and then how it kind of reverted back. So like initially, right, we had just these two pieces that was like, oh, let's play. Like you can tell they were kind of just experimenting with poison in the very beginning with these two cards, the Pit Scorpion Serpent Generator.
Yep.
They're kind of just like, oh, let's see how this works. And then in Future Sight, we got a couple more that tried to make it a little bit easier to inflict. Like, oh, we have an enchantment here that can enchant a creature to, they hit somebody, okay, now they get three. So now they only need to hit them, they don't need to hit them 10 times. They only need to hit them like, four to, 3 or 4 times, which is very cool. And then, of course, they were like, well, let's make it even easier with Infect. And let's make it even easier to kill with poison. And then they realized, oh shit,
We might have gone too
it's
far.
too easy. It's a little too easy to kill with poison and Infect with the Infect mechanics. So let's back it up a little bit. Let's go back to what Poisonous was with Toxic. Just kind of retrain it, give it a new name, but have it operate basically the same way. This is pretty much like it has a less reminder text to it. It's just, oh, players dealt damage by this creature with Toxic, get that poison counter. So I don't know why they didn't just give it the other name, but Poisonous 2.0 is what I call it. That's
Yeah,
basically what.
that's pretty much exactly what it is. Anyway, just an updated version, and like we were saying, it's not as big of a feel bad
No,
because that toxic
big
one,
pleasure.
it's only dealing one. It's poison.
Right. Or if they have like, well, it's Toxic X essentially.
Yeah,
So it's like creatures have more like Ixil has Toxic 2 and things of that nature. So let's see. Just to go over from that set, we got about 43 cards that were introduced with the Toxic keyword. With most of them being, yeah, obviously like 30% of them are in green. So green has been the predominant color when it comes to infect and toxic stuff. We've had green and black kind of being the predominant colors.
I mean, then you got a little bit of a white in there too.
Yeah, white's been there a little bit. Blue has been there with like Blighted Agent, being one of the biggest infect cards that I've seen in Legacy and stuff like that. But typically, like attracts the colors, right? The white, green, black, blue. Those have been the four main colors. You never saw it in red.
Nope.
As far as I know, I don't know if I've ever seen a red creature with infect
No.
or toxic or anything like that. It just wasn't a part of the that sphere of Phyrexia. They never dealt with like the oil, like the poisony kind of you know infecting nature of the rest of Phyrexia. The red faction just never they never dealt with it. It just wasn't a part of their shtick.
No, the most of them are in the Golgari colors, so green and black. White
Yep.
you see a little bit, and then blue you see very little.
Yeah, blue has very little toxic.
I mean, in terms of just monocolor blue cards that have toxic, there's literally one, I believe, and that is Unctus's Retrofitter,
Yeah.
and that's 2 in a blue for a 2/3 with toxic 1.
Yep.
But then you got stuff like Voidwing Hybrid, which is Demir, Venser Corpse Puppet, Demir as well. But most of these I'm seeing are in green or black.
Yeah. We did have a few red cards that had infect.
Oh, did we?
There were a total of 66 cards, according to Gather, that had infect. Well, one of them, actually technically 65, one of them was Burn the Impure, which hurts an opponent. It deals 3 damage to a creature. If they had infect, it deals 3 damage to the controller, which isn't bad, but we had Fallen Ferromancer, which was a 4-drop that had infect as a 1/1.
Okay.
It can tap to do a damage to any target, so it can inflict its poison to that. So that's kind of the biggest. That's actually one thing I definitely want to touch on is for creatures that have infect, they have part of their romantics is whenever this creature deals damage, it deals damage in the form of poison and the neg 1 counters. That's damage of any type, right? So it doesn't matter if it's dealing damage like with the Ferromancer instance, it deals 1 damage to any target. That's going to be dealt in the form of a -1/-1 counter to a creature and in the form of a poison counter to a player. So it doesn't matter what kind, it doesn't have to be combat damage is the biggest thing for infect, right? They don't have to they don't have to hit you exactly to do the damage. It can be other forms other than combat.
Yes.
Whereas that's the biggest difference in toxic and poisonous is they have to deal the combat damage to get you infected, essentially, to get you poisoned.
But
which is very cool.
yeah, it's Infect is a very, very neat but niche mechanic. Like we were talking earlier, you're not going to see a lot of people be playing Infect and like we were saying earlier, if it was really that powerful, there'd be a lot more decks on EDH and you'd be seeing it all the time.
Yeah.
You don't see it. And maybe that's because maybe we don't see it because people don't want to play Infect because it's such a feel bad.
It can be,
but I think a lot of it has to do with there's easier ways to win the game, especially in pods.
Yeah, when you're looking at options to win and ways to close the game out, Infect is kind of on the lower end of that totem pole. In all fairness, like it's a good way to win. It's a good way to, it's a fun mechanic to use, but it's tricky. It's a little more. It's more of the complicated side, right? Because you do need 30 to win. You do
Yep.
need to make sure you're spreading it out. You do need to make sure you're targeting properly, and you're inflicting enough poison to actually make it relevant. So it does have that kind of stigma bit to it, where it's just not as easy to do as, say, make an army of tokens and flood the board with creatures, or make an army of dragons, or make a bunch of elves, or whatever have you, or play a spell slinger deck that just casts a bunch of spells, takes a bunch of turns, blah blah blah, artifact combo. Like there's a whole slew of other ways to play and do things, where Infect kind of just falls to the wayside sometimes,
Yeah,
as far as options to win and play go. So,
but with that,
that's our history on Infect. Very cool, fun mechanic. I wish more people played it.
maybe we'll start seeing some more people play it, and when they start realizing that it's not always such a feel bad, you don't have to do Rogue's Passage with Blightsteel Colossus to win the game. um, don't do
You
that.
can. You by all means. I mean, it's a way to win.
But
By all means can do that.
you got one of my favorite pet cards in Triumph of the Hordes.
Oh, I love Triumph of the Hordes.
Oh my god,
So good.
it's one of my favorite green cards to put into a deck.
It's a very good way to. It's a very good win con. It's a very good way to just. You got an army of tokens. I think every token deck that has green should play Triumph of the Hordes. If you're playing a green deck and it's got tokens, you need to play Triumph of the Hordes. It's a great way to just, okay, game's over.
I think the only time I have ever won in a single turn with Infect and killed 3 other people was with Triumph of the Hordes.
It's very good.
That was in one of my dinosaur decks. But with that,
Absolutely.
there's no really new spoilers coming out. We got a little bit here.
Later.
Yeah, we got a little bit here that we're gonna have a little bit of a lull.
Love that Deadpool card. I gotta give me that Deadpool card.
That Deadpool card is freaking awesome. But
Do you see it's not it can't be interacted with?
yeah,
Yeah, so that ETB isn't really an ETB. It comes as he's entering.
it just doesn't.
It doesn't use a stack. It doesn't use any form of thing. It's just, okay, I'm gonna take your ability, you're gonna take this ability, and then that's it. It doesn't target, it gets around all the protection effects. It's so funny.
It's funny as all hell.
Dumb, man. It's dumb.
Like, I can't wait to see some of the shenanigans people pull off with that
They're
card.
gonna clone it. People are gonna try to clone him and go oops all Deadpool and just make a bunch of him in the deck. It's gonna be ridiculous.
But
They're gonna find a way.
oh yeah. But with that,
Absolutely.
as always, I'm Kava.
I'm Jack.
And-
Like and sub.
Yes, we will talk to you guys all later.